Alright, hey everybody. Let's do a quick video about all these cool vinyls that I got in. What? Vinyls? Let's talk. Okay, so, yes, Jeff here. I'm going to approach this issue on vinyl versus vinyls, plural. I hear it come up occasionally. I hear people berated for it. I hear arguments over it. So, Jeff, why are you making a video that is guaranteed to get you a lot of thumbs downs? I hope that people will listen to this, and regardless of whether they agree with my outcome, that they wouldn't click the thumbs down, that they would give me a thumbs up for logical conclusions, grammatical uses, just the work that was put into getting to where I got. This is my position at this moment. I'm flexible if I'm proven a different way. This is a view that I've had ever since I've gotten back into buying records. I haven't been engaged much in the fight with people who want to, use this staunch rule of vinyl, being no plural. It's not a big deal to me. But this is what I think about it. This is where I've studied to understand where I am. And this is the conclusion that I've come to. So give me props for that. Give me a thumbs up for that. Don't give me a thumbs down and then no comment. If you're going to disagree with me, then let's talk. I mean, and that's fine. I'm not even going to debate or argue with people on this. If you want to put a comment below, I'll read it. I'm not going to engage back and forth. This is where I stand. This is the study that I've done. This is the research as I've got it currently. And if I find that I change my mind later, then fine. I will make a corrected video. I just wanted to get this out there because I keep hearing it come up, and I sometimes try to say things at times to people. I'm like, it's almost too much to try to go into. So I wanted to lay out the case for what I see is some of the issues and some of the conclusions that can and should be drawn. Now, I'm not getting this all from my own either. I went online and I've read arguments on both sides, and I found some pretty compelling arguments that lined up with what my thoughts were. I'm presenting my research and my position, and I hope that you give me credits and kudos for that. So give me a thumbs up that, hey, good content, but I disagree. Good approach, but I disagree. Good research and logic, but I disagree on you here. Don't just give me a thumbs down and fly by. But people are going to do that anyway because people are what people do. So the argument, basically, the modern argument goes, the plural of vinyl is vinyl. And therefore, the attitudes start after that. Now, it is acknowledged that vinyl, the word vinyl, is a mass noun, meaning that it doesn't have a plural to it. That's what people will say. Mass nouns don't have plurals, sort of like the words like beer or cheese or wine. A mass noun is stuff that comes in variable but conceptually undifferentiated quantities. It doesn't define a quantity, but there is a quantity, but it's undefined, undifferentiated. You don't know the quantity, and that are measured rather than counted. So the word itself doesn't count an item. It's a measurement for the most part. A key factor I think that is forgotten here is that these nouns don't have a specific quantity. They are not counted, but they require additional words to be added to them to make that word countable, to add accountability to them directly. So you have 3 beer bottles. You don't have 3 beer. You have 3 wine bottles. You have 2 cheese slices. So you've got other words added to beer, wine, cheese that will define the quantity. These mass noun words alone do not relate a specific quantity count, just a potential quantity in general. So when they are used to specify a quantity, they are not, nor indeed can be used alone. They require additional words that reveal the specific quantity factor. And they also require a format, if you would, for that countability. 3 bottles, 3 slices. I'm sure most would agree that it is not proper to say I have 3 beer or I have 2 cheese to signify the quantity of those that I have in my hand. So the question is, does the word vinyl fit also into this mass noun category? If we agree that it does fit into this category, then you need to have additional terms to denote the quantities along with it. So, like having 3 beer bottles, you would have 5 vinyl records. Records is the plural count object of vinyl. This would be the proper grammar usage for this mass noun. Honestly, the big underlying problem is the usage of the term itself. Vinyl is not technically a specific object in and of itself. It is what an object is made out of, mainly. Records are made of vinyl. They are therefore not technically properly called vinyl in themselves. This, I think, is where the big issue actually comes from. As one commenter on one blog I read put it, vinyl, like plastic, is a mass noun, especially in its molten and pre-poured state. Calling a record a vinyl is what's pretentious. A record is made of vinyl. I would not call it a vinyl, as the one commenter said. Similarly, a compact disc is made up of plastic with a thin sheet of metal with the recording in the middle. Why don't we call those plastics or some other definition of what it's made of? We don't. We call them compact discs. I think the problem comes from how in more modern times and recent decades, with the resurgence of vinyl records, the terminology has begun to be used outside of the grammatical guidelines of old. So in effect, we've changed the terminology, the words used for something, and thus we've also had to realize we're changing the rules, whether or not we want to admit that or not. Many will say that the plural of vinyl is vinyl issue came from more of a modern hipsters. I admit, I don't recall ever really hearing that issue being around when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, but then again, maybe I was just out of touch with all the important issues of record collecting. If I was, then I guess others were too. In 1964, Time magazine said, while a few audio purists might quibble over the fidelity of some of the vintage vinyls, ... It's in Time magazine. In 1960, the Atlantic paper similarly said, when the LP development began, Mendelssohn had many albums remade at 10-inch single vinyls. They're using this in the old days, and there's not much controversy there. The New Oxford American Dictionary, when referring to a different object, obviously, that's made of vinyl, they still said light reflecting vinyls, plural, can be used in an unusual way, and the sentence goes on. Vinyl being used in the plural form. These seem to suggest that the term and use of vinyls, plural, was not a controversial issue before. And if you really stop and think about it, redefining or the way we use words and the way we change the terms, it's not uncommon. We do it all the time in our language, where we apply the material of something that's made, like in vinyl, to the actual item itself. I remember, not too long ago, whatever, maybe growing up, people would call denim jeans denims. And then you've got other terms that we use improperly, I should say. For instance, growing up, when you wanted to make a copy of a piece of paper, you would say, hey, can you get me a Xerox of this? Xerox was a company that made the copy machine. It wasn't the process of copying it. A photocopy on a Xerox machine is still a copying of a paper, but we would call it a Xerox. It's just you begin to use these terms in a way that it's not really grammatically or by definition proper. It's common, we do it. I think the same can be applied here. Similarly, another word. So you look up in your cupboard and you have all of these drinking utensils up there, and some of them are made of glass. You have glass cups. How often do you just call them glasses? Hand me a glass. Hand me a glass of water. What's a glass? Because now glass is no longer the material it's made of, it's the utensil itself. Hand me 4 glasses. Give me 2 glasses of water. We've changed the term to be something that it wasn't intended to be. Instead of saying, give me 4 glass cups versus plastic cups, we say, give me 4 glasses. And I think that is exactly what has happened with vinyl. Instead of saying, I went out and bought 4 vinyl records, we've shortened it to, I bought 4 vinyl. But doing so means that we are using the word in a different manner than is grammatically accurate. And therefore, we need to understand that we have to change the grammatical rules of it too. You can't carry over the grammatical rules of a word that we are no longer using properly in the grammatical use. It just, to me, makes sense. And there are lots of examples of that. If you really think about it, there are a lot of times that we've changed word usage, but we don't hold fast to the old way of doing things. But actually, when it comes to the topic of pluralizing mass nouns, that is even not uncommon in general usage. Some people call it by a technical term called countification. Make that word up, countification, where a mass noun gets morphed essentially in its use. Countification morphs the usage of the word, making the form of the mass noun to be used to refer to more than one type or instance for the named category. This has allowed people to now speak in terms such as, give me 2 beers, or give me 4 cheeses on my pizza, for example. This is common, and we do it commonly, and we probably don't even realize it, because beer and cheese, as mentioned, are mass nouns of undifferentiated quantity, and that by their own rules need to have other words added to them to define and describe the quantity, but has now become acceptable to be used as a standalone countable quantity type object. And if you even think about other objects in the music world that we're talking about and how things have changed over time from the defined usage of what the word actually means to what we have become to use, the jargon that we use in the music industry and how it changes over time. It's the same with vinyl, but let's look at some of the other things. This is what we'd call a record, right? Record is short for recording. So if you have a recording on an object, it is a record. So this is a record. But likewise, this is a record. This is a CD record. This is a cassette record. These are all records because by definition, it is a recording. And so, but do we call this a record anymore? No. Do we call this a record anymore? No, not usually. This is a vinyl record. Do we call this a record? Yes, we do. But we don't call this a record because we've changed the term record to mean this thing that's in here. This is the record. It's not the fact that it's a recording and that record is short for recording. It is the fact that we now call one a record and we call another a cassette and we call another a CD. We've shortened the term. So this is a record, this is a cassette, this is a CD. This is not a plastic thingy, this is not a tape thingy, and this is not a vinyl. Okay? That's the point. The terms that we've used, we've truncated some of the terminology, and in doing so, we've changed the implication and the grammar usage behind it. And we have to accept that on all accounts. Back in the days, this record may, and this is not a vinyl record because it's not made of vinyl. They're made of acetate or shellac. Those are terms that we used back in the day. An acetate, to hear your music on an acetate, or a shellac. Now, technically those terms really, I guess, shouldn't have been plural either, but back in the day they would say you've got a pretty bunch of shellacs and you've got a bunch of acetates because it was the plurality of it. So this is not a vinyl record, but it is a record. Similarly, album. Now, the term album technically means a collection of similar items. So this would be a song album, a collection of songs. You have a photo album. It's an album collecting together a bunch of photos. That's the technical term for album. It's a collection of items. This is an album. This is an album. This is an album. This is a CD album. This is a cassette album. These are albums. They're collections of songs in one place. But where did the original term really come from to where we started calling this and maybe these, how did this album become this album over time? Well, because in the day, these would be released. And in this case, this is more, because they are fast, this is more of a single. There's a song on each side. I Ain't Got Nobody by Bing Crosby. It is a song, and maybe some of these had more than one song, so you would call them more of an album, a collection. But this would be a recording. Now, you take this recording, recordings, records, and you stick this recording into this book with all these other recordings that are falling out because the record's falling apart. You put them all together into all these recordings into this book, and you have a record album, a collection of records. So, album is a collection. Photo album is a collection of photos. Record album is a collection of records. We call this an album. It's only one. Why is it an album? It's a collection of songs. I still think it follows the specific definition of a collection. This would be an album of songs. But is that how it originated? Is that how it came to use? No. It's changed over time. All of these are albums. Even Discogs would classify these as albums because they're all a collection. So to me, in the end, the rule that the plural of vinyl is actually more of an invented rule, and others agree. And it is one that is essentially opposite to the general language patterns that we use. It is one without much tradition or logic behind it. It is one that seeks to apply a definition to a word where the word is no longer used in the same fashion as it was originally defined to use. As one commenter concluded on one blog I read, you don't shop on vinyl store day, you shop on record store day. And the rest of us shop at that record store the other 364 days of the year to avoid you hipsters. Again, a lot of people equate this fascination with the singular, with vinyl, mean plural for vinyl, as being more of a modern hipster invention. Again, I don't recall it being an issue, and it's been used in the past without issue for decades. The point is, this is not a hard, fast, legal, historical, or grammatical rule in itself, and is therefore not something that someone else should arrogantly look down upon another and demean them over the improper usage. The usage is not concrete as defined by the grammar. If you choose to live by the rule that the plural of vinyl is vinyl, then fine, so be it. But don't force that contrived guideline upon everybody else around you. Seeking to state that you collect vinyl, and you're referring to it as a standalone object, and not that you are collecting vinyl records, which is the more grammatically accurate use of the term, means that you have to accept that you've redefined the term by your usage, while trying to hold on to the original grammatical definition and usage of the term that you are now misusing. The point is, it's not something that's recognized across the board as being a rule. It doesn't mean that it can't be altered. We've seen plenty of examples where mass nouns have been altered. Vinyl is now a bone of contention for many people. But 10, 20 years from now, it may become more accepted, just as all of the other misuses of terms and the pluralization of other mass nouns over time has become common to us today. Let's not make it an issue to argue over. Let's not make it an issue to belittle other people over. I collect vinyl records. Records is plural. If I want to say I have bought 5 vinyls today, it's because I've taken the term that everybody else is using in a different manner, and I have used it in a different manner likewise, and therefore have applied a different grammatical rule to it, as is logically acceptable in grammar, and as we have seen across the board, is not something that's uncommon to be done. Anyway, that's all for now. Don't hate me. But, be nice to one another. Love one another. And let's just enjoy this music. Whether you collect it on vinyls or CDs or cassettes or whatever, enjoy it all. Rock on.